Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Soul and Screen. In this particular video, I will be doing a review on Tyler Perry's Sistas season 10, episode number 2, titled Guilty. So let's just get into it. Let me do the review and then I'll kind of talk about what I think about the episode. The episode 1 leaves off where there's a code blue called where everybody's in the hospital. They just found out that Sabrina was in a major car accident. And the episode picks up in episode number 2 where, basically, they're all concerned, and Zach and Fatima are trying to bring some reason and just get everybody to calm down. Which is why I say I'm not really sure why everybody throws that much shade at Zach. You know what I'm saying? Like, he is absolutely the person he's the protector of the group, and he wants to make sure, especially that the women in his life are taken care of. So I'm not really sure why he gets as much shade as he does for his past when he's obviously making up with it in his present. So anyway, with that being said, the doctor basically, Andi asked Dr. Vaughn, like, what does that mean, a code blue? And he explains that it means someone went into cardiac arrest or something like that. And so Zach steps in and he's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean that it's Sabrina. And so the doctor goes, yeah, that's true. We have a lot of people in ICU and stuff. And so he goes, but I can go see if you want me to. And so she goes, yes, please. So while she's doing that, of course, Rich had just walked up and heard some of this as well. So he's like, what's going on? And so he's like, I just saw Sabrina. And, so again, everybody's like, just you guys calm down. And so this weird moment where Maurice, I don't know, it was interesting that he was talking about Sabrina in the past tense as far as like her being gone already. And that was just interesting to me because he was doing it so much so that Danni at a certain point actually started referencing her, Sabrina, in the past as well. She, and then she caught herself and she was like, oh no, she is, meaning they were saying like, she was such a good friend to me. Nobody ever cared for me like her. And, just stuff like that. And so eventually, Danni caught herself and she was like, no, she is going to be okay, and that kind of stuff. And she was kind of still getting down on herself because she had just, kept referencing the fact that she had just hung up on Sabrina, and that was like her last conversation with her. And so I think we all kind of knew that was still going to really be haunting for Danni. And so it's going to be interesting to see where they go with this thing. But anyway, while she's there talking, her phone rings and Tony's actually being really cool. He's consoling her. Remember, he took her to the hospital and he's consoling her and everything. But then her phone rings and he looks down and she does too. And she, turns her, like, just ignores the call basically, and he gets an attitude. He's like, he pushes himself away from her, and so she's like, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. And he was like, nah, like, forget it. So he immediately got triggered into having an attitude, and she was like, I'm sorry. And he was like, nah, you know what, Danny, do what you got to do basically. And he was just like, I tell you what, I just came here to see about Sabrina because we all care about her, but me and you, we done. But he's like saying this in front of the whole group. And so Zach, of course, steps into big brother mode and was like, yo, boy, like, real talk, you gonna have to bring that down. And so Fatima was like, babe, because she knows Zach. And so she grabs Zach and she puts him on the other side of her like she does whenever she's trying to get between him and somebody that he about to possibly slide. So she was like, Zach, and so so Tony, he's like, nah. So he stands up and Zach kind of turns back. He was like, y'all don't know what she did. And so Zach turns around and he was like, you standing up? Like you what, you want to do this? And so Andi comes in and so she goes, she's there already, but she grabs Zach and she's like, you know what, Zach, I got this. And she was like, Tony, we don't have time for this. And he was like, no. She goes, no, I don't know what, whatever issue you guys are having right now, this is not the time for it. And so, she basically gets him told and he's like, you're right, I'm sorry. So he chills out and then it kind of like goes to I'm just gonna try to do the whole hospital scene. Let me just do that. Let me do scenes. So after that, the next hospital scene picks up basically where the doctor comes in. And he, the one that was helping Sabrina, and he goes, are you guys here for Sabrina Hollins? And they all go, yeah. And so he goes, is there a Danielle King? And so she goes, yeah, I'm right here. And so he goes, okay, Sabrina listed you at her next of kin. And she was like, really? And he was like, yeah. So do you want me to talk to you about Sabrina's, situation in front of everybody, or do you want? So she's like, no, you can talk about here. And so he goes, okay. So he goes into explaining that Sabrina was in a major car accident. She's had some really bad injuries as a result of it. So he starts telling him about broken bones, that she has internal bleeding going on, head injuries and everything, to the point that they had to, resuscitate her a couple of times, and they finally got her stable, but she's in a coma. And so, they're all, of course, distraught and stuff. And so he's like, but that's pretty much all I have for you right now. And so they're like, what's her prognosis? And so he's like, in all honesty, I can't really say, but she's a fighter. But if she can make it through the night, she stands better chance. And so they were like, okay. And so then he goes, but you guys may want to look into calling her family if they want to say, to get here, just in case they need to say goodbye. And so here's one inconsistency that I caught immediately, which, no shade to Courtney. Let me say this straight out, that I think Courtney's going to have his work cut out for him in trying to tie up loose ends and continue on storylines and stuff. And I don't know if he got a chance to go back and see every single season and just to kind of try to pick up on certain things. But Danni tells the doctor that, Sabrina was raised by her grandmother, so she doesn't have any family. Her grandmother, passed away, so she doesn't have any living family. Well, we know that in season 5, when Sabrina and Maurice got arrested, that one of the things that she told Calvin was that she doesn't think people understand, that she takes care of her mom. Her mom has diabetes and things like that. So with that being said, unless they're trying to make it seem like something happened to the mama within season 5 and, the 10th season, Sabrina actually did have, some living relatives. So with that being said, that was that. So the doctor basically tells them, you guys should go home and get some rest and that kind of stuff. And they were like, well, we're going to stay. And he was like, well, you guys aren't going to be able to go into ICU. So just go ahead and go. So Dr. Vaughn is like kind of telling them that, they're really strict with the visitation policies and stuff. And so that they don't let people in. So you guys really should just, go ahead and go home. So Zach does his thing. He tells Fatima, like, babe, we got to go. And I love this about Zach because, once again, this is him in protection mode. He didn't say this, but to me, when I saw him say that, it was him looking out for his woman and his unborn child. Babe, I got to get you home. Like, this has been a lot on her. You witnessed a friend's car explosion. Like, we was throwing a barbecue. You was out all night the night before. Like, he's just like, to me, when I saw him trying to get her home to rest. And so anyway, they leave, and then everybody starts trickling out after that. So Maurice gets up and he goes, I guess I'll go ahead and go home. And Maurice and Danni actually had a really good moment where, because they don't typically get along, like I said, the writers from season 7, 8, and 9 tried to push them together in season 9 so that they could, take over Karen's store. But they really didn't have a really good relationship. They were always kind of at each other. Sabrina really was the glue holding, them together, or the commonality. But she actually told Maurice, who was saying that, he was feeling bad because he never really told Sabrina how much she meant to him, and he was feeling bad. And so Danni grabbed him and she was like, Sabrina knows that you love her and things like that. And he was like, I hope so. So they had a really cute moment. Then, he leaves, and then Tony was like, let me get you home to Danni. And she was like, oh yeah, we did ride together, hun. And so they leave, and then Rich kind of goes and gets some coffee, and it's really just Andi and Dr. Vaughn. And he tries to say, can I take this moment to have a conversation with you? And she goes, no, like, this isn't the time. And he's like, Andi, please. And so she's like, no, I really don't think this is the time to do it. And so he tells her, okay, well, I really just want to apologize. And so she's like, there is nothing for you to say. She was like, you lied. And he was like, how did I lie? And she basically tells him that you were lying through omission. By you not telling me the full story, so to speak, that's lying. And so he basically was trying to say, like, what happened to, like, innocent to proven guilty? And she was just like, you know what, I'm done, I'm good. And so she leaves, and that's pretty much it for the hospital scene, except there's one scene where the doctor does go walk past, like kind of run into Dr. Vaughn and tells Dr. Vaughn that it's not looking good for Sabrina. And then one other where Rich happens to make his way into the ICU and finds out and sees Sabrina. They don't show her, but basically it's, he sees her and doesn't look like it's a good shot. Like, she doesn't look good basically. So let's see. I'll go ahead and let me just jump to Zach and Fatima really quick, because that's exactly what they did with them. They gave them one of the shortest. This is the short episode, and this is really early on. And I was really hoping that we didn't start this stuff out again. And what I mean by that, for those who haven't seen the episode, is Zach and Fatima get home, and they have this. They walk in. And, Fatima's like, oh, my goodness, I'm so tired. And she's like, babe, remind me not to throw another impromptu cookout. Like, this was horrible. The stuff that happened with, Andi, her car blowing up, and now Sabrina. And he was like, babe, like, it wasn't a bad cookout. He was like, at least the food was good. And she was like, yeah. And he was like, but it wasn't like a bad cookout. And then out of all people, they have Fatima bring up, I'm really glad Karen and the baby and stuff and then was gone. And, so here's what I'm saying. I honestly don't think that Fatima does not mean Karen any harm, but Fatima is not typically the one to be bringing up Karen, and there is no reason for them to continue to insinuate and bring Karen into conversations. Now, hear me when I say this. I understand they need to close that door, but close it already. You guys gave us 50 something seconds of Zach and Fatima, and it was all about Karen and Aaron and them and moving. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, really? Like, that's what y'all gonna do? And so I say that to say that I really hope Courtney don't take on what his counterparts were doing, his predecessors or whatever, like, do not do what the writers of season 7, 8, and 9 did, and was trying to eliminate scenes or minimize the scenes of Zach and Fatima to the point where we get seconds and 2-minute, scenes with them per episode, because I honestly think if you guys do that, this is going to mess up the show again. But at the same time, if you do it, tell me so that I ain't got to worry about watching it and be really interested or anything, because to be honest, I've said this before on this channel, that the only reason I watch Sistas is because I started watching Zatima and wanted to come over to see how their love story started, and ended up becoming a fan of Sistas because of the Zatima couple and what was going on with their situation. Now, if they're going to be continuing the hating on Zach and Fatima's characters and not letting them have longer scenes, or they don't know what to do with them now, so they're going to start putting them into small amounts of scenes, I just need them to let me know so I can go ahead and bow out, and I'll start talking about some other stuff or whatever. Because as of right now, there's not a whole lot to discuss about Sista. So I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I'm not liking that. I did not like that part about this episode. But with that being said, before I move ahead too soon, I'm going to give Courtney some time to, solidify a little bit more of his storylines and episodes before I really so you go in there. So I'm going to give him some grace and say that this is the second episode. So we're going to go ahead, and hopefully this is the last episode of the season where we see small scenes of the Zach and Fatima, and then enough already of the Karen references and conversations. I understand Andi needing to talk to her and calling her, but Zach and Fatima in their own home, moments after everything, out of everything they could have talked about happened that day. Karen, really? So no. Anyway, so really that's pretty much the end of that scene with them. I like, of course, the cute moment that they had at the end where, she's just like, I'm really tired, and she leans her head on his shoulder, and he kisses her head, of course. And that was pretty much the end of the Zach and Fatima scene for the episode. Let's go ahead and get into Miss Andi. Miss Andi gets home, and, she gets back home, and her mom, she's sitting on the couch, and her mom comes out and is like, what's going on? What's the matter? And so she tells her mom, what happened with Sabrina and stuff like that. And she's like, oh my goodness, is she okay? And she's like, no, she's not. And so she was like, oh my goodness, I know you guys really became really close and everything. And somehow her mom said, because Andi was like, with Karen being gone. And so her mom says something to the point where, well, Karen deserves the right to move on with her life and, and start over again. And if she feels like she needs to do that away from Atlanta, then, you should be happy for her. And she was like, no, I am happy for her. And she told her daughter, I know deep down you jealous of her. And I was like, yo, like, wow. And so Andi got mad too. She was like, excuse me. And she was like, yeah, I think you want, your own kind of, I think she said Denzel or whatever, but, she was basically saying she want her own man and nice looking man and family and stuff. And so, of course, that ticked Andi off because, like, why would you come at me like that after I just told you some devastating news about a best friend of mine, and now you coming at me about the whole kid and having family things? So she basically, pulls her chain on her mom about that conversation, and she, stomps off and everything. And so, then later, like, the episode picks up where Andi is like coming out of the bedroom. I think she had I think before then she even called Karen, but don't misquote me on that, because again, I'm probably going to take some of this out of order, but I'm just talking scene at this moment, like at the house, what happened at Andi's house. So at one point, let me say it that way, Andi actually does call Karen and tells Karen what's going on with Sabrina, but they don't actually show Karen, and they don't have like Karen intercomming in or her voice or anything like that. So it's literally just a scene that Andi's talking on the phone, conveying the information about Sabrina's accident. She eventually comes out of her room, and she walks into her mom and Cheyenne, who happened to be in the kitchen. And earlier there was a moment where the mom and Cheyenne had a moment, because Cheyenne happened to be in Andi's room while she was at the hospital looking through her clothes, trying to go somewhere and stuff like that. And her mom told her, leave Andi stuff alone. She don't like you and her stuff. And so the sister Cheyenne was like, she needs to learn how to share and all that kind of stuff. And her mom was like, put it back. And after her mom left, she was like, well, whatever is Andi's mine and mine is hers, and that kind of stuff. Basically saying like she ain't about to do what her mama said. So Andi walks from her bedroom into the kitchen area, and it's her mom and Cheyenne is cooking. And so she was like, what is all this? And so her mom goes, well, Cheyenne wanted to cook some dinner for you. She was like, really? And so she was like, yeah, I just wanted to cook for as an apology for drinking your wine, because when Andi got mad at her mom's comment, she stormed out to go get something to drink, and her wine was gone, and apparently her sister had drunk it. So she was telling Andi, I'm cooking to say sorry for drinking your wine, and just kind of basically getting on your nerves. And so Andi was like, really? And so her mom started telling her, your sister can really cook. She cook almost as good as me and all this kind of stuff. And so she was like, is that right? And so she was like, where are you staying, basically? Like, I think we should talk about, your sleeping arrangements, because the mom had just said, I'm going to go home. And so, Andi was like, well, one of us should go with you. And so she's like, well, no, your aunt's going to go. And so she's like, fine. And she goes, so Cheyenne, where are you staying, basically? And her mom was like, she's staying with you. And so, of course, Andi got mad again and was like, listen, you guys just tried to, make plans about my life without discussing it with me, asking me, like, this is my space. This is my safe space. I don't want no drama, and so Cheyenne gets an attitude, and she was like, I told you, Mom, she wasn't going to go for this and everything. So she basically tells Andi, F you and your house, and she storms off. And so And her mom goes to Andi like, why you do that to her? And she's like, Mom, I'm just trying to tell you, like, me and her ain't never really got along, and this and that. She's like, well, did she do something that I don't know about? Like, why do you treat her like that? And she was just like, Mom, it's just, we just don't have that connection. She was like, and it comes out that Andi is like 10 years older than her sister. So her sister is around 25-ish. And so, you know what I'm saying? So the mom is just like, well, you need to treat her better than that. Like, I was just over here watching you like talk about Karen and mourning her and all that, so she kind of keeps going back to the comparison relationship between Andi and her friends versus Andi and her sister, which, to each his own, that's fine. But, Andi basically was just like, it's not happening. And so she gets mad at Andi. She was like, she's your sister and you basically need to let her stay here. And she's going off on Andi, and Andi was like, no. And so she ends up crying and she goes, please, I need you to let her stay here. Now, let me put a pin here. I don't know about Mrs. Barnes. You know what I'm saying? I see this as a real manipulation. Now, hear me when I say this. I don't have kids. And so while I understand you want your kids to get along, it's something up, because even a 10-year difference, I don't know. Like, I'm about 4 years older than my brother that I grew up with. And when he was first born, like, he was my baby, right? Then he got on my nerves because all the attention, and I was like the only kid, right? So of course, he got on my nerves for a minute, but then he was my baby again. But no matter what, he was my brother. And there was a 4-year age difference in that. Now, sibling wise, again, I shared that I have some step siblings and bonus siblings who I am 10 plus years older than. Now, we're not as close as me and my brother that's 4 years younger than me, but I didn't also grow up in the same house as them. And so I feel like that's a little different, because it's such a big age gap that at 10 years old, you would think that Andi had a really good, like, nurturing relationship with her sister, because it was like, you the baby, like, it's too big of a age gap in my mind. I don't know for sure, to be jealous, because you had 10 years on your own. She can't really fit your clothes now. You know what I'm saying? Like, when when she's 10, you 20, and you in college already. And so, anyway, so I feel like it still may be some other stuff there. But with that being said, I honestly think Mrs. Barnes is doing some manipulation tactics. She just went from going full off on Andi, telling her she better basically watch her mouth, because Andi told her, some stuff. And Andi was like, wait a minute, so you gonna tell me to watch my mouth? But she younger than me, and she just F-bombed, me in my own house in front of you, and you coming at me, but you didn't say nothing to her. And so, you know what I mean? So she went off on Andi, and then she went to the waterworks. Now, hear me also when I say this. I understand that she's going through some health problems and stuff like that, but you just got to watch the manipulation tactics with some people, because just because she her mama and everything don't always mean that, unfortunately, I've run into people whose parents did not mean them well. And it seems like she wants her to kind of take responsibility for Cheyenne. And Cheyenne being 25, it helps make sense a little bit more, because now we see why she's just so loopy and stuff, because she's 25. And then, and then later on, we find out Cheyenne goes out to the club, and she is smoking, she drinking, she's snorting stuff, so she passes full out. So we see the previews of next week, but she's going to get into some trouble. But what I'm saying is, do you know that she do this? Because you trying to leave her with Andi. Like, Andi not her mama, you her mama. And it sounds like she kind of want Andi to, it's one thing to look after your sibling and stuff and be there for them, but it sounds like she wants Andi to almost kind of mother her like secondhand. And I don't know about that. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see what you guys think about that. So anyway, that's them. Let's move on to who? Danni and Tony. So Danni and Tony he brings her home. And she gets to the door, of course, and she's like, you coming in? And he was like, nope, I'm good. I just wanted to make sure that you got home. And, he wasn't that abrupt with the no, but you know what I'm saying? She was like, but you don't want to come in? And he was like, no, I just wanted to make sure you got home. I saw how upset you was. And so, when you got the news. And so I just wanted to make sure you was good. And so she was like, well, thank you. You didn't have to do that. And so he saw his bag, and he goes in and he grabs his bag. Now, here's my thing with Tony. You send him mixed signals. You sending mixed signals, Tony, because either you gonna be done with her or not. You know what I'm saying? Because that's fine if you going, you still want to work through some stuff, and you know what I mean, but you send a mixed signals. You literally just told her you done with her, and you know what I'm saying? Like that back and forth stuff, I'm not for. I need you, if you gonna forgive me, it's gonna take some time, of course. So I'm not expecting us to be ha ha he he giggle and kissing and rubbing all each other when I literally just broke your heart because I did sleep with this man. I get that. But once again, Danni is like really putting all this on herself. She is like taking full responsibility for it. I don't think that's okay. And Tony, to me, is out of line, for, making it to be her fault only when they both had something to do with this issue that they're having, although it was in two different ways, right? You know what I'm saying? But she's not saying that she didn't do wrong. She's just saying, can we start over? And so at a point, it does have to come to the conversation. Are you gonna forgive me and I forgive you and we move on and we don't bring this up no more, but we set boundaries. We have, we set some conversation. We have some real hard conversations so that we can try to power on because I love you and you love me, or are we done? Because if you really done with me, then then coming over and seeing, it taking me to the hospital and rubbing on me the way that you was until the phone call came. Like he was really consoling her and it really seems genuine. And so I truly understand that you don't fall out of love with someone that quickly. That much I get. I'm just saying but you just told me at the hospital, no matter what we done. So then why bring me home? Because you could have just got me an Uber, or I got other friends here. So you could have just said, you think you can catch a ride with Andi, or you think you can catch a ride with, Zach and Fatima could take you home. Like it was plenty of people there. So that's what I'm saying. So Tony, he need to just tell her he's still a little emotional and he need to figure out some stuff too, but don't be, I care about you and I want to make sure you're okay, but we done. You know what I'm saying? So that's just my thought anyway. So again, it'll be interesting to catch you guys' thoughts on this. The next thing was Maurice and them, which again, like I said, right now, I don't know enough. I'm not really feeling the Maurice and Dylan mesh. So glad he got somebody and stuff, but I just think they gave them too much screen time considering they didn't give Zach and Fatima enough screen time, and we just don't know nothing about them yet. They're not really an interesting enough couple to keep me interested in the show, and that's just my take on it. So I don't know, it was too much time spent on them. It was too much time spent with the Cheyenne stuff, getting dressed, and like we didn't need to see all that. Like I don't like. I feel like that could have been really cut down to a couple of scenes, and we would have got the point. And that's just my opinion. And then there was a moment, of course, where so Dylan, he's trying to, console Maurice. He makes him something to eat. He's like, I'm gonna go run you a bath. And that was pretty much it. Maurice ends up calling Pam and tells Pam what's going on with Sabrina, to the point where he was like, I just want you to know that I'm not really going to be able to help too much with the business, because remember, they all came together to start this new business. And he was like, I'm going to have to put in more time at the bank to, until Sabrina can get back. And so, they bring up Karen again. And so, she's like, well, dang, I hope, did Karen know? And now that I get, right? Like this part, I feel like was a good, authentic insertion of Karen, because that's the only way they really know each other. But I didn't think Zach and Fatima needed to bring them up. And you know what I'm saying? Andi, that conversation, that was authentic, but Zach and Fatima, absolutely not. So anyway, that's pretty much it for the episode. I'm going to say that I don't think it was a horrible episode, but it also wasn't a really good one to me. It was not, I wouldn't say good. I would say it's okay. I would say it's an okay episode. I wasn't expecting that kind of an okay episode this early. I was hoping that, we got a couple of good episodes in, but maybe they're going to flip it on it. And that's like the one filler episode. I call those filler episodes when they're not super good, before we get into a nice little run of good episodes. And I think once they kind of get past, and I hate to say it like this, but get past this whole Sabrina, like they just need to go ahead and tell us if they're going to pull the plug or not. And I don't mean that to be mean. I'm just saying, like, we don't want to spend another season or 6 episodes in where, and I could be exaggerating because I don't remember, but that we still at the hospital trying to get, like we did in season 9 with Karen and her situation. So that's just what I think. Anyway, let me know what you think. Let's get into the conversation like we do. What did you think about the episode? Did you agree with me in regards to Zach and Fatima, the couple of second scene that they had, and then just being spent talking about Karen and them? Do you think that was a true kind of moment, or are you kind of like with me, like I don't even think that was a conversation that they would have had? Let me know what you think about Mrs. Barnes and Andy's mom. Like, I don't know, right now I'm getting really, really manipulative, and I didn't grow up with a manipulative mom, so that's just the way it's coming across to me. But you guys let me know what you think, because I know everybody comes up in different places and spaces and stuff like that. So let me know what you think. Also, what do you think about Cheyenne? I think, she is 25. So yeah, you expect certain things, but the age difference is actually kind of helping explain certain things and boundaries that do not seem to be in place with her and Andy, but explaining some things because, she all in her closet and her clothes. And if you know that you don't really have a good relationship with your sister anyway, then it's certain things that her and her mom could have handled differently. If you know you don't get along and talk to your sister that much, then you probably don't want to tell your mom, I'm just going to show up at her house, right? You know what I mean? Like, you should tell her I'm coming, that kind of a thing. You should have a conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like, it seemed like for each of them to know, the mom and Cheyenne know that they don't have that Andy does not have a good relationship, a really close relationship, let's put it that way, then they probably shouldn't have been making plans for her to just show up and surprise or stay at her house. And so I think that was kind of out of line on both of their parts as well. And so, but that's me. So let's get into that conversation. Also, again, with the Tony and Danny thing, like, are you kind of like me? Like, he's sending mixed signals. That's what I think. Or do you think, he, it's not to say that he's not emotional, so he doesn't, he does get his moment and stuff. But in that particular moment, he's giving a lot of mixed signals, and she's really in a deep, vulnerable place because she's feeling bad about him and what she did with him. She's hurt to an extent because he stole my money, and I don't really know, what's going on. And now her best friend, someone she did consider her sister, is in the hospital who may not make it. And so, like, I shouldn't be having to figure out if I gotta walk on eggshells around you. You know what I'm saying? The issues, if we're going to be, work on it and get past it, then we need to be able to do that. But you need to figure out if you're going to be here for me in this moment or if you not, you know what I'm saying? And that's just my opinion about it. So, but again, I understand emotions take over, but, let me hear what you think about that as well. Like I said, the Maurice and Dylan thing, I don't have too much to say about that. I don't care enough about that couple as of right now, and Courtney is going to have to write something pretty marvelous to make me get into it, and it's just because I don't even see that it's necessary. I mean, I'm fine with Maurice having someone in his life, but it's like he already getting ready to start a new business and all this kind of stuff. I think they could have dealt with and built the relationship that he's going to have with his new business partners, then like cycled in him a love relationship or anything like that. Because right now, Dylan is serving no purpose to me because it's too soon. It's rushed, right? Like, he just started dating him. And I'm not saying that you can't start a new relationship and be there, but I'm just saying it's seeming too forced a little bit. Not really on Courtney's end. He's just picking up where they left off. And that's why I say I'm gonna be very mindful and give Courtney some time to tie up some loose ends before I really be like, oh, season 10 is a bust. It's too early to me to say that season 10 is a bust. This is the second episode. I'm not going to be able to call that or pull that until a little further in, but right now I think it's too soon. As of right now, it's 50-50. It was a good first episode, and it was a not so good. It was an okay episode number 2. So I still think have hope for Courtney steering, bringing and tying things together and bringing the momentum of watching Sistas on Wednesday. Oh, it's Wednesday, Sistas is coming on. I'm still hopeful that he's going to bring back that momentum that I used to have. Because now it's just like I kind of watch it, but I could go to sleep on it too. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't want to stay in that place because I really, really do like the show and want to support the show and the actors. But anyway, let's get into the conversation. Please let me know what you think about this whole episode. Once again, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you down in the comments. Bye.